Hi everyone, my name is Pepper Pace and I am an author of IR. Now IR is interracial, and that is, in my definition for interracial, in the genre that I write in, is where there is a black woman who is involved with in a romance with someone of a different race. So it could be a white person, or it could be there is actually a black woman, Asian man genre also. So all of that is encompassed in IR. Now, I am best known for a book called Beast, and Beast is a book about it's kind of like a twist on Beauty and the Beast, and there are so many twists on Beauty and the Beast. But I'm not going to go into details about Beast because at some point I'm going to do a reading on Beast. And that brings me to why I'm here filming this right now. I wanted to give more information about my books. Now, I've written over 50 books, and I want to start out by telling you a little bit more about myself as an author, and hopefully I will touch on each of these books that I've read. That's my dog. I knew he was going to start barking as soon as I started doing this. But anyway, what you will find with my stories is that I call it writing outside of the box. And that's basically where I write about unlikely romances. So in my story of Beast, we're talking about a man who has a craniofacial deformity. And his deformity is very, very severe, where he scares people who see him. He doesn't have, like, his nose is flattened. He has like his face appears to be split. So, and then it's about a woman, and he is the beautiful one. And then it's about the love interest is a black woman who, she's shallow, and she doesn't see the beauty in herself. And in that way, she is, in essence, the beast. So I like to flip my stories around. And then my story, Juicy, is about a homeless homeless man who appears to be probably a little bit mentally ill, and he forms a friendship with a black woman who he helps when she's in need. So these unlikely romances are what I'm known for. But I want to be able to express to people who don't know me why you should read a Pepper Pace novel, a Pepper Pace short story, or even purchase a Pepper Pace audiobook. So I'm going to just do a series on my books. But before I do that, so my first episode in this series is going to be just a little bit about me and why I write the way I do. I am from Cincinnati. And Cincinnati, I feel like we have such a certain voice. We're Midwest, we're Northern, we're Southern, we're just such a mixture. In Cincinnati, we're conservative. So when I was growing up, being in an interracial relationship was, not something that was really common in my area. But me, myself, I've always been in interracial relationships. So when I first started wanting to write stories, I wrote AA, so African American stories. But I really loved reading. When I read my first IR book, it was so exciting to me. And I started like voraciously reading these books. And I didn't know where to find it. So, there's places like Genesis Press. Now, this is back in like 2012, 2010. Genesis Press had AA books, but they had different categories and genres, and they had an IR genre. So I read every Genesis Press IR book, and then I would find Sandra Kitt, and then I read start reading their books. Well, then someone told me about a place where you can write online. Now, mind you, this is before I really started sharing my story, so I was not published at this time. But they said that, you can go to a place called Literotica. And Literotica has stories in so many different genres. And they're romance, erotica. And so I started to voraciously read these IR stories. And once I started reading IR stories, I never got the same enjoyment from AA stories. And I know there are a lot of people who maybe have never read an IR book or never thought they would be interested in it or don't even live that lifestyle or care about that lifestyle. But then they read these books and they find like there is just something in it that pulls you in and it's hard to move away from that. So I started reading all of these books and they were free. And I thought, well, these people are putting their stories out there for free and people are giving them feedback and they're entering these contests. So I like to write. I'm going to try to do this. So I started putting my stories up on Literotica. And very quickly I found that to be honest with you, that's my cat. Let me see if there he is. That's not my cat. That's my daughter's cat. But I'm grandma cat sitter while my daughter's out of the country. She's teaching in Japan. But anyway, so Literotica quickly became a place where I felt like I could be comfortable sharing my story and getting feedback because a lot of people were getting a lot of um, advice on how they should write or what they could do to improve their writing, and that was what I was really about. So I decided to practice writing and getting the same feeling from my stories that I got from other people's stories. Some of my favorite writers, like Stephen King, where you are reading a book until midnight, but you got to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to get ready for work. So Literotica helped me to share these stories that I put, these experimental stories, in these notebooks that I'd never shown anybody really. And I really pushed myself to write outside of the box. And so people really liked the stories, and I didn't think that people would. When I wrote Juicy about the homeless man and the angry black woman, my first thought was, why would anybody else want to read a story that is so unconventional and doesn't follow any other type of storyline that I've ever read? And so when I put it out there, I remember getting a comment from this one guy was like, you would be surprised at how people are gravitating to something that's not always the same type of story. The thing about the name Pepper Paste, so when you write online, it's not necessarily that you don't want nobody to know who you are. What happened with me is that I also did role play online. So I had like friends online and we never met, but they were like my really good friends, and we would write stories and we would create avatars and we would go sit into clubs and dance with each other and have so much fun. But those were just our alter egos. And so I named mine Pepper Paste. So when I started writing on Literotica, I just kept on with the Pepper Paste name. But as my popularity grew, I decided that I wanted to be published, or I wanted to write. And I kept talking to my followers. I would say things like, well, all of these stories that I put up there, why would I sell them? You've all read them. And it was like, don't be crazy. We will buy them, put them up there. And that's when I really started hearing about self-publishing. So I am an indie author. I am an indie author that has never been traditionally published. I've been offered, but it didn't work for me. So I left. I'm like, nope, I can't do that. You can't take my book and change it that much or tell me to do this, that, or that. When I write because I get this certain feeling from the story. And if you start cutting it up and taking away that feeling, then there's no reason for me to write. That's all there is to it. So I remained an indie author under the name Pepper Pace. And I decided to really start thinking about writing independently, publishing myself, but it seems such a hard thing to do, and I just really didn't think anybody would ever buy my stuff, and I didn't know how the programs worked, and I didn't have money to be paying people to do this kind of stuff. I didn't have money for editors and things like that. So I just kind of kept putting it on back burner, putting it on the back burner. But one day somebody sent me a message and said, you wrote this book called Stranded, and it won #1 in the IR category in 2009. I think it was on Literotica. And I just saw that book published on Amazon, and I think this was like in 2010. So they just took it right from Literotica, changed the name of the main characters, and put it under a different name. All the characters under a different name, and then the author under a different name. And that's what tipped this person off. They were like, is that you or is that somebody else? So you create your story and it's like your baby, and then somebody kidnap your baby and you go running looking for that. And then I'm writing to the head of Amazon and I'm like, somebody stole my story, and this is, and I mean, the guy wrote me back and he was like, I even told him, I said, this person changed the name of my character. My character's name is Ocean. Why would I say, that Martha was named Martha because she was wet and loud like the ocean? Her name was Ocean, and she was named Ocean because she was wet and loud like the ocean. So, I mean, he believed me and he immediately took the book all out. But this is the thing. The book was getting so many positive reviews. And I had followers on Literotica. I won contests on Literotica. But I never had faith that I would be able to actually sell a book, that somebody would pay money for my story. So that was the catalyst for me becoming an author. So I took it, day after day took it down, I put it back up, and Stranded has remained one of my most popular books after all of these years. After Stranded was published, I just slowly started putting all of my other books, Juicy, Beast, Wheels of Steel, all of those books went up there, and they became very popular, and I gathered a following as an indie author in the IR genre. So that's how I began as an author. But what a lot of people don't know is that I am very, very shy. So for me, it was very difficult for me to even think about being a published author and having to do book tours and things like that. I remember when my boyfriend at that time, he said to me, you should be an author. And this is before I even got on Literotica. He said, you should be an author. And I said, but I can never do a book tour. I could never talk in front of people. I could never do this and that and other. And he would say, well, I heard that you can publish your own books on Amazon. And I was like, yeah, but I don't think I could ever do that. But then that particular person passed away soon after he said that. And so there was something in me that said, I'm not going to not do this. I'm going to do this. And so that's when I started going on Literotica. But I was so shy. And I started writing from a different place than I had ever written before. So I said to myself, what is the hardest thing for you to write? Because I knew I wanted to write some romance. I wanted to write some kind of youth stories. I might want to write a little bit of horror, but I never wanted to write erotica. That was never, if you understood the type of person that I always was, I never cursed. I grew up, when I grew up, my sisters and I, we never said cuss words. Even when we were adults, when we were kids, we would rhyme a cuss word. You never said a cuss word. So it wasn't until I was an adult and I, ended my first adult relationship that something in me snapped. And after me and my kid's father broke up, and it was just such a nasty breakup, then I became a different person, and I was able to curse at that time because I was cursing at that person. But it still was never easy for me to curse or say dirty words. So I was like, all right, so I'm going to take this notebook and I'm going to write the hardest thing it is for me to write, and that is erotica. And I'm going to write it. And I remember saying this to myself, I'm going to write these stories as if my mama is never going to read these books. I'm not going to worry about who reads this book. I'm not going to worry about anything I put in this book. I'm going to write the most sweetest erotica, the raunchiest erotica, the most over the edge erotica that I can think of. And I did all of that in that notebook. And then I slipped it on Literotica, and people were like, whoo, shit. Whew, that's hot. All right. So after I started getting that following, I was like, I love erotica. I love literotica. I love the IR genre. So I'm going to stay an IR author. Even though I really never intended to be an IR author, I said, and I never intended to be an erotic IR author, but I said to myself, I've read so much IR, and if I can get positive feedback on my stories and then build that genre with that positivity and show people that you don't have to keep writing the same rehash story over and over and over again. Sandra Kitt then wrote this story. You don't need to write this story. Write your own story. Think of something new. And that was always my goal, is to think of something new. I don't care if I'm not published or not. I get to write what I want, how I want it, when, as often as I want. And I put out so many books, so many short stories, and I just constantly wrote. But then later I found like I'm not going to stop writing IR, but I want to write some sci-fi, and I want to write, some other type of things that's not just all about sex. Although writing about sex is very, very interesting, and I enjoy it. And I'll tell you way more information about my books as it continues, but I am going to stop here, because the next time you click on one of my videos, I hope that you will enjoy a book that I'm going to read. And that's what I want to do. I want to discuss one of my books, do a reading. If you want to ask me questions, leave them in the comments. This is something new for me. I've done vlogs before, but I've never done something quite like this. So I hope you guys enjoy it. If you have any suggestions, be sure to let me know. If you like this video, be sure to like this video. If you want to subscribe to my YouTube channel, go ahead and subscribe to it. There is a notification bell if you want to know when I upload something new, because I have 50 books. Yeah, I have 50 stories. So I hope to do this pretty often. But for now, I will talk to you later.